Do.
Play. What are we talking about again? Oh, it's music, right? Yeah.
It's another podcast,
Oh,
mate.
it's a
Another podcast.
Oh, brilliant. Love these.
Yeah. This time featuring two of the biggest artists on the planet.
Yes.
Beyonce and Taylor Swift. The return of a much-loved dance pop duo. Yes, Justice are back.
Yay!
Annie Clark returns with her latest St Vincent incarnation. And apparently there's a Pet Shop Boys album too.
For me, they are the two biggest artists on the planet.
Yeah. We start
All right.
with the 8th studio album from Beyonce, Cabocotta. We reviewed it twice before. Obviously, the last time was on her last album, Renaissance, on podcast 5 2022. But we also reviewed 4, which, strange enough, I believe was her 4th album.
Did we?
Back on podcast 8 2011.
God.
I know. So anyway, this is the second part of a trilogy project, which we began with the release of
Brilliant.
Renaissance in 2022, an album that you really liked, and
did.
I really admired more for its inventiveness.
Okay.
So anyway, Pete, hit me, baby, one more time.
All right. Do you know what? I think we're going to end up in a similar sort of place. So for me, I mean, this is the second in an apparent trilogy.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I'll come back to that because I think, this is going to sound terribly cliche, but I think this does for country, or what modern country might be, that Renaissance did for EDM. I think that it's quite a, here is a genre, here is a history of a genre, here are a number of artists, not just black artists, but I appreciate the black artists that she's pushing forward as well.
Yes.
But white artists too. Not that matters here, but it does in the US. And it's a Beyonce album.
It is a Beyonce album. It's
well.
not a country album, it's a Beyonce album.
Beyonce album as well.
Miss
Yeah,
Knowles
exactly.
or Miss Carter is
Yeah.
keen to say.
Exactly. And there's even a moment, I think one of the tracks of the album for me is Ya Ya, and there's even a moment just ahead of that where they say no genre should matter. And I think that is encapsulates
On Spaghetti.
On Spaghetti. It encapsulates even what this is all about. So whilst it starts and occasionally sounds like you might expect from Beyonce, I find the sort of transition in and out of what you might consider both traditional and modern country is really well done. And I feel that this is a real celebration. It's not just a celebration of country, it's a celebration of music. I find this is a real celebration of a lot of traditional and modern pop through country, through sort of Americana. I'm really sort of, if I was going to pull out, let's get to some of the tracks that I could really quite enjoy. I think I prefer the countryer elements of the album.
I would agree.
Yeah. So if you want to go full circle, things like Texas Hold'em.
Although the worst lyrics on the album by far, the lyrics are fucking shot.
It's pop music. It's pop music.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it's pop music done a certain way. You know?
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, the lyrics are fucking awful, but actually, it's a ridiculously catchy song.
It's ridiculously catchy.
And great banjo from Rhiannon Giddens.
16 Carriages, Daughter.
Yeah.
But then you get the two cameos. Well, there's several cameos. The two that pulled out for me were Two Most Wanted with Miley Cyrus. Really enjoyed that. Levi's Jeans with Post Malone. We'll come back to him, I'm sure, at some point in this podcast as well.
Or not, maybe.
Or maybe not, but I will. I really enjoyed that too. Blackbird, 2 eyes in Blackbird. Did you notice that?
There's 2 eyes in everything.
There's 2 eyes in everything. And I think it's all about 2. It's part 2.
Exactly.
Get it?
I do get it, Pete, yeah.
Blackbird. Obviously, Blackbird's a great tune because someone really good wrote it.
And obviously, it's playing on it because it's lifting the entire the entire actual guitar track.
Indeed, yeah. So I've got a lot of time for this. In summary, I've got a lot of time for this, and I think because there's one awesome, very long album that we also reviewed for this podcast, and this was also a very long album, but this one I
80 minutes, yes.
This one I have quite a bit of time for because it does sort of go all over those places I've just sort of rambled through in terms of the modern, the classic, the traditional, the Americana, the pop music. And to be honest with you, towards the end, he even starts to point back to Renaissance with tracks like Two Hands to Heaven and Sweet Honey Buckin. It almost feels like they could be club music tunes.
Mm.
And I find that there was a bit of a closing of a circle there if you took the two albums together, which I wonder where she goes with part 3.
I hadn't kind of thought that. I'm thinking gospel.
Yeah, no, yeah. Okay.
And the reason I'm thinking that is
Yeah.
because I think the trilogy is her exploring her own family musical roots.
Absolutely.
Because she comes from Texas.
Indeed.
And her wider family are from kind of like Louisiana and stuff like that.
She mentions the Carters.
Yes, it mentions
Yeah.
It mentions that in the opening track. You know, about being too country and they're not country enough kind of thing. So I kind of think that's what this is about, and it is about kind of like the whole. For me, I think maybe the whole thing of the trilogy is to kind of like bring in what she perceives as the 3 elements of her musical background.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm thinking, is gospel the kind of thing that's the obvious bit that's missing? Maybe not. Who knows? Or maybe that's just kind of cliched kind of like thing. Who knows?
Gospel album anyway, maybe.
But yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I think what I like about it is because she does have that background that you in no way think that this is inauthentic.
No.
In the kind of leaning into the kind of country kind of thing, because I mean I kind of agree with her in a way that it's not a country album. It's not like someone sitting there going, "Hey, I'm going to do a country album. Let's do a country album."
Yeah.
Even though clearly you've got fucking Dolly on it and
and Willie Nelson.
And Willie Nelson. Like Willie Nelson's basically just doing filler tracks.
But Willie Nelson.
But you've got.
I'm also here.
Yeah, but you've got a cover of Jolene. You've got Blackbird, both of which absolutely brilliant covers.
Yeah.
Both of which are essentially karaoke, but frankly, if you're going to get someone to do karaoke versions of your songs, there are not many better places to go than Beyonce, and they're both done really, really well.
Indeed.
I think the first kind of half of this album is pretty flawless, frankly.
Yeah.
So from American Requiem, 16 Carriages, which is possibly my favourite track on the album, along with Daughter and Two Most Wanted, which you mentioned before.
Yeah.
What I like about Two Most Wanted is, again, it's one of the duets on the album. Bizarrely, they're all in a row. So you've got just for fun with Willie Jones, and then you've got Miley on Two Most Wanted, and then Post Malone on Levi's Jeans. Two Most Wanted, what I like about it is the pairing of Miley's voice with Beyonce's voice works really, really well.
It does, doesn't it?
The contrast with it, and it is like, and obviously, whilst it genuinely does kind of like literally lift from Landslide by Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac, it is just like a Fleetwood Mac song. You can, that combination of it, you hear that song and go, I want to hear, bizarrely, I want to hear Beyonce and Miley singing more songs together, because this sounds really good.
I mean, vocally, they're both in different places at different parts of the song as well.
Yeah.
There was a moment I was just like, wait, who's Beyonce and who's Miley Cyrus at this point? They just interlocked on that song so well.
Yeah, so it's great. I think when it gets to Levi, that's for me where the quality drops.
Yeah.
And I would have pulled the plug possibly after the Two Most Wanted track, because after that I think the album gets a bit throwaway B-sidey, and it's just a bit.
I agree.
The focus goes, and it feels more bloated and lacking in cohesion. And this is where you actually kicks in. This is 27 tracks, 80 minutes, rather than something that could have been pulled in at under an hour, and still been absolutely banging.
I agree.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Shows an artist that's still not afraid to defy expectations and push boundaries. but is not brilliant because there's still too much stuff in there that I would have cut out to make it a really good album. But speaking of expectations and pushing boundaries, let's move on to Taylor Swift.
Hey!
Tortured Poets Department. Biggest artist on the planet. 11th studio album, not including the re-recordings of the first. Well, I think it's the first 5 of the 6 original ones, isn't it? Yeah. We've reviewed 3 in the past: Evermore, Folklore on podcasts 9 and 8 of 2020, and Reputation on podcast 10 of 2017. Now, apparently, some old bloke from a popular pop combo, who we may be talking about later, claimed in a recent interview that Taylor Swift doesn't have any famous songs. He said,
yeah, go on.
quote unquote, Taylor Swift sort of fascinates me as a phenomenon because she's so popular. I sort of quite like the whole thing, but then when I listen to the records, for a phenomenon, she's not as big as, where's the famous songs? Where's Taylor Swift's Billie Jean? Now, even I'm thinking, probably our listeners sat at home thinking, Shake It Off or Love Story, perhaps, maybe for stars? But anyway, how big is Taylor Swift? Let's see. Tortured Poets Department sold just over 2.6 million copies in the US, including 1.6 million on the first day alone, and only Adele's 25, which racked in 3.3 million in 1 week, and sold more in the modern era. It sold nearly 1 million copies in vinyl in that first week as well, which is just bonkers. For reference, Beyonce's Cowboy Carter did almost 500,000 in sales in the first week. But it's not a competition. Taylor is selling a shitload. I think 300 million streams in the first day, and they are on Spotify. Anyway, more importantly, we saw her at a not totally sold out Shepherd's Bush Empire, capacity at about 2,000 people.
Yeah.
Supporting her second album, Fearless, almost 15 years ago this week. I was thinking it was last week.
Christ,
I think it was.
old.
Yeah. But what I am proud of, and this is genuinely not as just real thing, but actually, we both came out like kind of going, yeah, she's not going to be playing this kind of size venue again anytime soon, is she?
Yeah.
So I like to think we were right on that one at least. So, onto this album. We're into the third and possibly fourth if you include the second album, which makes up the full anthology version of this release, but we're only reviewing the traditional album version. And it's also the third, fourth one of working with the Nationals' Aaron Dresner, as well as long-time collaborator Jack Antonoff. And for me, following Folklore and Evermore and Midnights, it's just me or it's starting to get just a bit samey all of a sudden. You know.
Look.
And I don't want to start death threats from the Swifties
No, we certainly don't want that.
trying to come round to my house, because I'm going to say, don't get wrong, I think this is a good album.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, and I think there were some really, really great songs on this album.
Agree.
My Boy Only Breaks His Favourite Toys, Daddy I Love Him, Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, Fresh Out the Slammer, for example, just name a few. But one of the things I've always, and I am, I possibly am a Swiftie because I've been a fan from.
You've been a fan before Swifties were born.
From the first album. But one of the things that's always marked her career and has helped to propel her into the current spot as the global music superstar that she is a kind of fluidity that saw her morph seamlessly from that 15-year-old playing acoustic-based country music to a pop star over the course of that first 5 or 6 albums, and then has grown and grown album by album following that. Clearly she doesn't need career advice from me or indeed anyone else, I'm guessing. But I don't know, I just felt like I wanted to be braver on this album, and kind of push her boundaries a bit more, as Beyonce is just on what we just talked about. You know, I'm not expecting Taylor Goes metal or Taylor Goes drum and bass or Taylor Goes actual indie.
That'd be cool, though.
But if it did happen, that'd be great. And the thing is, a bit like Beyonce, a bit of the Beyonce thing. I genuinely think she's good enough that she could actually pull all of those things off. You know, but I think we need to get past where we are now, and we also need to get past Lana Del Rey, because she just seems to be doing Lana Del Rey karaoke in a lot of these songs, in her delivery of said songs. And I like Lana as well, before people can get on the back of that.
Yeah, they're going to at you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But, yeah, I don't know. And perhaps I'm just wanting too much and being unfair. And it is quite possible, because when someone has put out albums of the kind of quality that Miss Swift has done in the last few years, maybe it's unfair to kind of go, oh, I just want more. So in short, for me, so I'm actually I'm almost not reviewing the album. In short, it's good. It's often very good, fun and sometimes brutal lyrics, which has been, you know, a staple of Taylor's thing. You know, don't cross Taylor is the lyric. Still great at running seamlessly one-note melodies of songs that still resonate as really great songs. Really annoyed I'm not getting a chance to see her, but tickets were a tad hard to come by these days. And slightly more steeper priced than I think the 15 quid we paid for 15 years ago. So I think it is a really good album, but part of me just wanted there to be more.
It's a Tortured Poets review.
Yeah.
Yes.
That song is banging though.
Just the same. And you started there with that quote from Neil Tennant.
Oh, was that how it was?
Yeah, it was. Funny enough. They had an album out at the same time, which kind of helped or harmed sales, really. I think he's got a point, particularly in this relation to this particular album. And I think he was thinking in the context of Madonna and Michael Jackson.
She's equalled the Madonna record for the most number ones by a female artist in the UK.
Exactly, but all those people that had those massive world-changing tours back in the 80s and into the 90s, they had a catalogue, and you're absolutely right, Shake It Off. You know, it says like, can you name a Taylor Swift song? Yes, I can, Shake It Off. Maybe Latter Day, though, it's a little harder, and I'm sure Swifties would very strongly disagree, and they would probably even pull out songs from this album. But I think you're right. It's very well produced, and it's very strong in terms of quality of lyrics and songwriting. I cannot take that away.
Yeah, it's a good album.
She's an amazing songwriter. I wrote down here, she seems slightly older, slightly sadder, but no less spiky.
Yes, that seems fair.
I think that's a fair description of the songs on here. And I was reminded of our own... can we ever get past our own gig experience when we talk about Taylor Swift? Probably not. But
why should we?
When I think about songs like The Tortured Poets Department, But Daddy I Love Him and Guilty as Sin, all really plugs into that sort of earlier Taylor sort of vibe for me as well. So I would say this is a solid album, and she is in her own right an absolute genius, but maybe, just maybe, this one doesn't quite land. Let's forget about the length for a moment, I'll come back. It doesn't quite land in terms of it's very one note.
Yeah.
Or as my daughter would say, a bit meh. She's no Swiftie, by the way.
I'm saving my comment for later on.
It's a bit meh. What I do like about it, though, is when it does lean more into the folklore aspect. And I think folklore is probably one of my favourite albums of hers.
Folklore is brilliant.
And it's Aaron Dresner of The National. And again, I'm not a massive The National fan, but I feel that when Taylor and him combine, you get some proper magic there. And I regret, prior to this podcast, I haven't listened to part 2 or the anthology version yet, but I will, because I understand there's more of him there. I did listen to the song Black Dog, though, because of the whole pub thing.
Yes.
And I get it. So, for me, highlights do include the Post Malone song. Do include So Long London. Do include Florida with Florence and the Machine.
I wasn't keen on that.
No, I'm keen on that. It's a big pop hit. So yeah, against the Neil Tennant, there is a hit there.
Yeah.
And all those songs I previously mentioned before that are a little bit more in the sort of younger country department of Taylor, the era, if you will. Okay. Yeah, it's all good. I just think that overall, is this going to be the album that defines eras from now? Maybe not. Swifties don't at me.
Obviously, I have. So I'm going to throw back at you again in a minute. Obviously, now we're going to move on. We're going to stay with ladies. So we're going to move on to the 7th album from St Vincent.
Oh yes.
We have reviewed it before. We reviewed a 5th album, 2017's Mass Seduction, on podcast 9 2017. An album which I think I liked more than you did. This album, though, in the context of this podcast, is great. It's 40 minutes long.
Sweet relief. Sweet relief when I got to this one.
Yeah, this album was immediate. This album was immediately my friend.
I mean, those last 2 albums, I did review them back to back. That was killer.
Yeah, this album was immediately my friend because it's like, what? It's finished?
Yeah.
What do you mean it's finished?
In fact,
It's over?
In fact, the remaining 3 albums all win on that score.
Yeah. So, for me, we're back with an artist who I think kind of channels the kind of ethos of kind of Bowie, Prince, Kate Bush, and the rest of the people. So, what did we think of All Born Screaming?
This is a very varied album, and I don't mean that in quality. I mean in sound and in style. It's
why I mentioned those artists.
I completely get the Bowie reference. It is musical and vocal direction on all of these songs is different. It's a brilliant album for the Spotify streaming age because you can chop and change it and you get a completely different experience every time, but yet somehow it all hangs together, which is the opposite of what we often say.
This is true.
From the opener, the synthetic and skybound, almost Goldfrapp-esque.
So I thought all about Eve.
Yes, that's also good.
Which is just weird. I hadn't thought of All About Eve for a long time, and then suddenly it's like, ooh.
And to the brilliant Trent Reznor sounding Reckless.
Absolutely.
I'll mention him again before we're done.
Wasn't Justin Mendel Johnson on the album, and he has a strong Nin connection.
There's a Nin connection here, and you can hear it very clearly on more than one track. The 2 halves, I think, of the St Vincent sound sort of come together, and so you get the half that's the synthscapes and the big electronic pieces, and then the other half is a bit more of a stomping electro rock kind of sound, and interpretations of both of those halves appear throughout the album. I really liked. Actually, no, we'll come back to that moment. One of the standouts for me is midway through we get Violent Times, which I'm sure that must be like a James Bond throw-off. John Barry.
Bond theme, a bit like Garbage 2 is what I've written.
Yes, exactly. That is definitely something she wrote for the last Daniel Craig movie that's just been shot into this album.
Yeah.
I'm making that up, but it could be. It wouldn't sound lost on a modern Bond soundtrack opener. I
have another Bond theme in the podcast, by the way.
I'm sure you do. I think side B is possibly more interesting as well. When you get to that sort of the power's out, Sweetest Fruit, So Many Planets. There's that sequence of songs. I think this is actually, it kind of settles into a point at that point, but then it comes back with things like All Born Screaming towards the end, or at the end.
Great track.
Which I really love. And again, this is my second Reznor
It's another build.
Yeah, it builds. Pauses. There's a pause, and then you get the second part, which is like an elongated Reznor outro.
Yeah, very much so.
Like Ghosts or something. It's brilliant. Also want to shout out Big Time Nothing and Flea. I love Flea with its deliciously graphic lyrics about being a flea on you and just biting you like a piece of meat.
It reminded me of John Donne's poem, The Flea.
Yes.
Actually.
Maybe there's more than a tenuous connection to that. So there you go.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I remember when we did Mass Seduction, which was an album that I really liked. I was less keen on, and which was not the reason why I didn't review it, but I was less keen on her album that came out a couple of years ago, Daddy Daddy Issues or Daddy something, that we probably would have reviewed, but that was the year when we literally did like 4 podcasts because we were a bit shit.
Was that post or pre-pandemic?
Post, but for whatever reason we just were.
But not the actual pandemic.
So actually, in a way, I was disappointed we couldn't discuss it because I was like so disappointed in it. I mean, critically, everyone loved it, but for me, it wasn't great. This was back for me where Mass Seduction was in just, as you say, just capturing different sounds and different things, but still making them coherent musically. So you have got the industrial nin-like stuff on the Reckless, and even Broken Man, which starts off kind of princey and then becomes more ninny.
Yeah.
Flea, as you say, I believe Mr. Dave Grohl is playing drums on that particular track.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
Which, given that it is the grunge track, it seems very appropriate. You mentioned Big Time Nothing, which I like. Cause I read an interview with her in the NMA when she was talking about that song, and talking about how that was basically channeling her depression and anxiety kind of issues lyrically into it, kind of going, And she said, "This is the sound that's going on inside of my head every day, saying, 'Go, go, go, you stupid bitch. You think you're something and you're fucking nothing, you idiot.'" Kind of thing, and that's kind of like where that came from. And Swedish Fruit, which references producer and musician Sophie and Daniel Sotomayor, who was the first openly gay political cartoonist in the US, both of whom died too young. We actually reviewed and liked Sophie's one album, All of Every Pearl's Own Insides, available on Podcast 6, 2018. And then, as you say, it kind of like you build up to that kind of the ending of the title track, which is just great. And also because of, like I said, because of the fact that I also did the 2 big albums first, so they're very long. I was listening to this and it finished, and I was like, "Sorry, what?"
That's
that it? And then you go, "Oh, okay, well, I'll go back and listen again." Excellent.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the next hour.
Yes, exactly. It's like, "Oh, this is nice. It's finished. Oh, brilliant." So yeah, it's
Don't out me, Swifties.
a really strong album. So moving on to the 15th studio release from the Pet Shop Boys.
Sweet.
Will They Never Leave Me in Peace?
No, will they never leave you in peace?
Apparently not. Apparently not. We've reviewed 5 previous outings from the Pet Shop Boys. Yes. Hotspot on Podcast 1, 2020.
Nice.
Super on Podcast 5, 2016.
Good times.
Release on Podcast 12, 2015.
Did I make that happen?
Elysium on Podcast 9, 2012. And this is not really a Pet Shop Boys album, but it was a Pet Shop Boys album. Most Incredible Thing, which was on Podcast 5, 2011, which is the first thing we ever reviewed of them.
Wonderful.
Which was a ballet, I believe.
Good times. Good times. Yeah, I still listen to that.
So,
Yep.
What is there to say about this latest release? Well, it kicks off with, I think, some fairly good PSP. Loneliness. Really like it, especially the bit where the drums and keys drop out for a couple of lines, 2/3 in. Nice introspective moment there, which is good. And then actually, from then on in, well, it's a bit Pet Shop Boysy. Which, as we know, is not always a good thing.
It can mean 2 different things in this conversation.
Right, it can. So, we have Feel.
Let's hear your version.
We have Feel. Yeah. We have When I'm Dancing. We have Dancing Star, which, are all classic PSP in that annoying, catchy, dancey kind of thing. It's the kind of stuff that I have to say they do really, really well. But there is more to this album than just those songs. So we have New London Boy, which starts well. But then has Liam, I was about to say. God. Oh, God.
Liam.
Yeah. Neil.
Yeah.
Doing his kind of West End Girls talky, rappy
40 years,
thing.
Yeah.
And I think he was just trying to drag up my own fundamental dislike of the band at that point. All done to a beat that's basically white lines, isn't it? He does at least reference Bowie. So
Roxy and Bowie.
I'll perhaps just about forgive him. But this is the point where this album starts to go wrong for me. Yeah. And I'm going to say this now. Schlanger Hit Parade is utter bollocks. Sexy, 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 my fucking arse. It's shit. Is this one of the, for me, one of the worst things the Pet Shop Boys have ever recorded. I'm also not quite sure about the bossa nova style for Secret of Happiness
no,
either.
I'm going to come to that. I'm not going to let that pass.
Yeah. So, I think they say the album was losing me at this point.
Yeah,
and I'm not sure even the electric guitar making a brief appearance on Bullet for Narcissus can make things better. However, we then end with Love is the Law.
Oh.
Which I think is the album's best track.
Wow.
And I also think Bond theme.
I loved it.
In the kind of Bond ballad type thing that we've had recently.
Sure. Yeah,
I could see this being a Bond ballad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hadn't thought that.
So for me,
that's nice. I like that.
It's a 50-50 record. Yeah. 50% bien.
Yeah, you got me there.
Peut-être très bien. Wow. And 50% meh. There. Look, I finished on a bilingual note.
See what you did there.
Got five albums mentioned in the
review. I noticed all the mentions there. I'm going to add a couple. Not much more than that. Let's see if we can get all 15 in.
I did try and see if I could shoe more in, but I'm going to have to go some real weird tangents to shoe in other ones.
I reckon I can do another 3, maybe 4, possibly. So I mean, oh, come on, these guys and me, we go a long way back. It's been compared to Elysium. There's one. Even though the sleeve, or perhaps even the album as a whole, is a direct callback to Actually. There's 2.
I got Actually in mind.
Yeah, did you get Actually? Mm-hmm. Okay. Although I think it hangs together a little bit reminiscent of the album Very. That's 3. That's it, I'm done. Unless I get a 4th one in. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see how this goes. I think this album is a lot warmer and actually a lot brighter than their more recent Stuart Price trilogy, which begins with Electric. There you go, there's a 4th.
I got electric guitar, see.
Yeah, you did. Oh, you did? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well done. It's much more maximalist, I think, is the phrase that they've used in press releases and such. And yes, Neil has said there's an orchestra on every track. We've heard that. Loneliness has really grown on me. I wasn't a fan to begin with. I never am. I'm never a big fan of the lead single.
I think, last time round it was because it was shit.
Yeah.
But just saying, Pete. But actually, I also.
You're not a fan of Ollie Alexander. I'm picking
yeah. I also didn't like Loneliness the first time the first couple of times I heard it.
Kind of great.
But yes, it is actually a very good song.
It has grown on me, and there's 2 Beatles reference. One, the opening bell is obviously John Lennon's mother, and the other is obviously the lyrical reference to Ringo. For me, where this album really kicks in, there's a few musical motifs throughout this album which really sort of hook me, and the first one of those is that flute-like synth at the opening of Feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love that and the sort of the chorus, I will never let you down again. It's really that's probably one of my favourite tracks on the album.
And it feels great.
I love Feel. I hear what you're saying about New London Boy. I do like New London Boy. That again has grown on me. The rap, it's obviously there because it's West End Girls and it does feel a little bit worked in, but yes, I get it. Why Am I Dancing with, again, second musical motif, the sort of trumpets there, the sort of opening fanfare. Apparently that's from a musical that they haven't released yet, which is about the Emperor's New Clothes. And that's like an up-tempo version of a song that they might have down the line on that. I did prefer second single, Dancing Star. It sounds completely out of context, though, as a single. But in the context of the album, I actually think it flows a lot better. And the inevitable bootleg version of it clashed with Borderline or Holiday by Madonna has been released.
Yeah.
On YouTube, you can find that. And it does work quite well. It's quite funny.
everyone's raving about a new Bohemia, which is the next single.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mention that. Sorry.
I'm
also.
Yeah.
That's why. That's why I didn't mention it. It's not. It's
alright.
fine.
It
But
was fine.
unfortunately, for my review,
And
obviously there was bits that I really liked and bits I didn't like, and
no,
that fell right in the middle. So therefore, I didn't want to mention it.
That one for me. I mean, so this album comes from James Ford, who obviously did Memento Mori last year, which we loved, and Blur's album, which we loved.
True.
And he was obviously part of the Lost Shadow Puppets, Arctic Monkeys, and New Bohemia perhaps goes into that sort of territory a bit. I hear what you're saying about Schlager Hit Parade. I now understand what the song's about, though, so I'll park that. The musical
Talks about Christmas, for fuck's sake.
It does, but it talks about something else as well. Research it, kids. Google it.
Won't make any better, but it obviously make it more meaningful
I've
lyrically.
I know what Schlager is now, and so hello to our German fans. The Secret of Happiness, I actually really do like that.
You like the bossa nova?
I like the bossa nova Burt Bacharach trumpet thing. It sounds really naff, but I love it. It's just like, there's a whole. It's one of the warmer tracks on the album, and it's one of the more romantic songs. That it's in that they don't write
That's
these.
True.
They don't write these songs that often. You mentioned Bilingual. There's one on there where there is also a bossa nova. What's it called? I don't know why it doesn't come as a surprise. Thank you. Dredge that out. It's that sort of school of oh my goodness, I've discovered I love you, and I love that from them. It's really nice. It's funny what you say about Love Is the Law, because I didn't like it at all when I first heard the album, but actually I've come to love it myself. And apparently it's about Oscar Wilde's life post-prison.
Mm-hmm.
So he's sort of... Yeah. It feels like that. It's someone sat in a bar making observations about everyone around them in a very sort of cynical and quite dark way. And what I love about the end of it, and I think maybe I'm reading too much, is right at the end you have that coda. I think that's It's a Sin. I think that's a callback to actually. There's an interpolation, thank you, of It's a Sin right at the end, and I think that's an absolute circle back all the way back to their imperial phrase. I think they've and It's a Sin as a sequel to that song would make perfect sense as well. So how do I feel as a Pet Shop Boys fan? Overall, I like this album a lot. Is it their greatest album in 30 years? It's certainly sold bucket loads. No. Is it their best album in 10 years? Possibly. I think I need repeated listens. I think it will end mid to high in terms of my eventual threading of their career. Whenever that may be, many years from now.
I'm trying to think that.
So I've got a real soft spot for the Stuart Price albums, Hotspot, Electric, Super.
Yeah, I think I quite like Super.
Yeah, I like all of those albums, but they've gone back to James Ford has almost done on them that he did with Depeche Mode last year. He's taken them back to a popular phase. So it is very reminiscent of some of their greater stuff, and I appreciate that. It's certainly a lot warmer and fuller than some of the stuff they've done recently. And I think the success, certainly the commercial success, is deserved.
Okay.
I shall pause there.
Moving on. Well, you're going to pause there, but obviously, the way this podcast works is...
I don't pause, I have to carry on.
No, because it's your turn to start, so yeah.
Oh.
Justice.
Hyperdrama. Justice.
Fourth studio album, first since 2016's Woman, and the only artist on today's podcast who we've never reviewed before.
Yeah.
Although, given that the last album was 2016, and then before that, I think all their albums could have potentially been reviewed in our podcast since back in the day, but we've never really done it. So, le français,
Mais oui.
le danse.
It's like letting nonetheless wash over me. This is some proper European EDM. It is okay. What do I think from the opening? So the opening Never Ender with Tame Impala, who appear on more than one track.
I have to
They
say.
do.
They collaborate really well on this album. I think this album really kicks into gear though with the double-sided generator, which is track 2. It's probably the loudest track on the album. It's one part techno, and then it drops into this other part string-washed movie soundtrack.
I have possibly my favourite track on the podcast.
Yeah.
Just screams to me, turn up volume to 11.
Exactly. Yes, and it just goes bang, 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 bang. Big orchestra, which I love. And the softer vocals that then follow on the more club-infused after image sort of settle really well. And that leads into a really nice section of the album, which sounds like it could be their live set, starting with Dear Alan. It feels like there's 2 or 3 songs there. But what I love about this album is you can't chop it up on Spotify. It actually feels like a mix all the way through. You could put this on in a live set and it sounds like a mix that goes all the way through. I really like that. But you do get on side 2 that more experimental, dare I say it, French side. With the sort of Moonlight Rendezvous and Explorer. And
sorry, Moonlight, did they think Moonlight Rendezvous is basically just...
It's air.
No, see.
I got air.
I got Careless Whisper, George Michael.
Oh, did you? Oh, wow. So I wasn't thinking that.
It's literally Careless Whisper.
All right, Careless Whisper done by Air. And then maybe a little Daft Punk just thrown in for good measure. I think the album closes out really well with Saturn Vibe. Overall, I think it's a really great paced album. There's plenty of variety to keep things interesting from start to finish. Unlike St Vincent, you can't jump it up and listen to it in different order, but it still is equally varied.
I have mixed feelings about this record. I like it, but I have mixed feelings about it. But when they're doing Orbital, so on Generator, actually, I am totally on board the Justice boat. See also Incognito, which has some passages in that remind me of 70s kind of Todd Utopia. Ping, who haven't done it for a while. Explorer that has Conan, Moccasin and Muscle Memory, which were also, the kind of stuff that is mostly instrumental and doesn't really have much kind of singing. On the more dance-orientated side of things, it's good, but one thing that annoys me about the album is the fact that, as enjoyable as Neverender, One Night All Night, which have Tame Impala, After Image that has Rimon, Mannequin Love that has the Flints, Saturn 9 that has Miguel, and The End that has Thundercat are, they all just sound the same vocally. It all has that same kind of pitched falsetto range type thing, which may be intentional, but for me, there's no contrast. So it's really hard. If you played all those songs in a row to me, I would not be able to tell you that it was a different artist singing on any of them, because they all just sound exactly the same. And that for me is annoying, not problematic, because I think the songs themselves are still pretty good, but I'm clearly in a nitpicking mode this month. That's supposed to normally. That annoyed me, because I just kind of thought, why not have people that actually sound different, or just have Tame Impala just do it on every track if you want. If that's the sound you want, just do that. Just do that, because Miguel, Ramon, and even Thundercat all just sound the same as Blokey from Tame Impala singing the vocals. It's exactly the same kind of like slightly kind of like thunder falsetto song thing. Yeah. Minor quibble. So it's probably for fans of the band, it's probably more polished and less rough around the edges than they were in the past. But then again, they've been doing this for like 20 years now. So why wouldn't it be? But glad to have them back. It's a good album.
Yes.
Album of the podcast?
Nonetheless, by the Pet Shop Boys, obviously. Did you expect anything else?
I am... See, If the Beyonce album would have had a proper editor on it,
contender.
I would have definitely been looking at it. But at 80 minutes, no, sorry. Taylor Swift also possibly the same argument. It's a really good album, but
it's far too long.
In the I've made an album that's 40 minutes long. St Vincent on Ball Screaming would be my
I have to say
simply because it works as an album.
Yeah.
And you're not thinking, oh, there's lots of filler in this that's just getting in the way of stuff. So yeah.
I have to agree. If we weren't reviewing Pet Shop Boys nonetheless, and we took that out of the equation, it would be St Vincent for me as well.
Until next time, kids.